Hello everybody, this is Steve Sigmiller, bringing you a training on some sales skills. The skill we're going to go over today is called overcoming objections. So let's get started. Okay, so in our business we've got some classic objections, right? You've gone through a sale with a customer and at the end you've asked for the sale and your customer says something like this: I need to think about it, I'll be back tomorrow, do you have a business card? I need to talk with my spouse, or I don't get paid until Friday. So the question we have is, well, what do you do in these situations? What do you say to overcome these objections and earn somebody's business? And how do you do that in a way where you don't come off as a pushy salesperson? So there's an objection reality that we need to understand. So the first is that customers want to buy today. If they've come into your store and you've had a conversation with them about products, they are wanting and willing to buy today. There's a condition to that though, which is number 2. That condition is that they will only buy from you if you have solved a problem. So if you haven't solved a problem for them, then they are going to leave and they're actually going to find somebody else to solve it for them. So the other thing we need to realize is that most objections are a mask covering the real objection. Okay? And you can think about this in your own life as you've gone shopping. Think of the last time you went shoe shopping. And let's say you went into a store, you had a specific pair of shoes in mind that you were looking for, and the shoe sales rep shows you a couple pair, you try them on, you don't like them. Well, what do you say to that guy? You say, I don't really like these, I'm not buying them. No, you actually will probably said something like, these seem nice, well, I'll be back tomorrow, or let me think about it, I'll come back. Right? And then you just went right to the next store and looked for the pair that you were actually looking for. So our customers will do the same thing. Very rarely are they going to tell you their real objection. Most of the time they're going to come up with one of those classics to mask their real objection. Okay, so here's the big secret on how to overcome these objections. Number 1 is to confirm that you understand. Number 2 is to discover and solve for the real objection. And step number 3 is to re-ask for the sale. If you can master these 3 steps, you'll actually close more deals and your customers will actually be happier with you. The other beautiful thing we need to remember about objections is customers that have objections are actually 22 times more likely to buy from us as long as we've resolved those objections. So those are actually a really, really good thing. And as we solve for those, we actually can gain customers' trust and gain their business. Okay, so how do we find these real objections? If a customer is masking them, what do we do? Well, there's 2 ways that you can find them. Number 1 is during the recommend phase of your sale. And number 2 is after you've asked for the sale. So in step number 1, or option number 1, what you do to overcome these is do what's called the soft close or the option close. So, and this is during the recommend phase. So if you've gone through a sales process, you've connected with a customer, you've discovered, you've asked the customer a bunch of questions about products they might need, and now you're recommending a plan, you're recommending a device, you're recommending accessories, all of those things. Basically, at each step, you're going to ask a question, and it's going to be an option question. So this example, based on what you've told me, Mr. Customer, I'd recommend that you go on the 6 gig plan or the 8 gig plan. Which do you feel more comfortable with? Then at that point, your customer has to say either 6 or 8 gigs, right? It's an option of one or the other. It's not a yes or no. If they say, I feel more comfortable with a 6 gig plan, now you reconfirm that. You say, okay, so the 6 gig plan works for you. Now they have to confirm that. Yes, that works. We say, great, and we move on. Now we know that they are comfortable with a 6 gig plan. Now that's also called, the reason why that's called a soft close is as you do that within each category of the recommend phase, by the time you get to the end, that each one of those are called soft closes. So when your and hard close happens, it doesn't feel quite as of a hard decision because they've said yes throughout the sale multiple times. Now, let's say they weren't comfortable with the 6 gig or the 8 gig plan, and you've asked this question. You say, hey, based on what you told me, I'd recommend the 68 gig plan. Which one works better for you? They would say something like, I'm not too sure. So at this point, now you can ask more questions around that topic, around why those plans don't work, and you can solve for that objection right then and there while you're on topic. So that's point number 2 on finding the real objection, and the benefit of this is that you can uncover objections while on topic. If you wait until the end and a customer has an objection about something that you talked about in the beginning, like in this example, the plan, your customer can stop paying attention or lose focus around the rest of your presentation because they have this in the back of their head that they've got a problem with the plan. So that's the other benefit of finding the objection with the soft or the option close. Okay. And you can do that same thing with phones, right? Based on what you told me, I'd recommend the S5 or the S4. Which one do you feel more comfortable with? They say, oh, the S5. I say, okay, great, let's go for it. Okay, so the other option is finding the real objection after you've asked for the sale. So if you've done the previous one and you've done the soft or the option close, and then you get to the end of the sale and your customer gives you one of the classics like, let me think about it. Now you have steps that you can take to overcome these objections. So the 3 steps, again, if we go back, is to confirm that you understand, discover and solve for the real objection, and then re-ask for the sale. So let's go through that with this classic, let me think about it. So step number 1, confirm. Okay, I understand that you need to think about it. I've now confirmed with them that I understand. Step number 2, discover the real objection. Well, what other questions do you have for me? What's holding you back from buying today? And those are the first 2 questions I'm going to ask. Now, you'll notice that this first question is a little bit softer. Right? Your customer may or may not give you a real answer to that question. And truthfully, they probably won't. They'll probably say, I don't really have any other questions. I still ask that one first anyways, because if I come out of the gate with this question here, what's holding you back from buying today, that can come off a little aggressive. And so I'm kind of layering and gradually getting more aggressive with each one of these questions. As we gradually get more aggressive, it doesn't feel as pushy. So my second question, what's holding you back from buying today? The other portion of this is I'm emphasizing buying today in this question, which will help me out later in the sale. Since I'm already putting that in there, they now know that I'm talking about buying today. If I were just to say, well, what's holding you back? That may uncover my need, but it's not uncovering the need and creating the urgency of buying today. If they don't really answer this question, then my third question here is I'll go back through each category of the sale and ask them questions around each one of those. I'll say, well, okay, is it the plan that you're not comfortable with? Is it the device you're not comfortable with? Or is it the price that you're not comfortable with? And I'll go through each one of those individually and wait for their answer. If I say, well, is it the plan that you're not comfortable with? And they say, well, no, I'm comfortable with the plan. I say, okay. Is it the device that we're not comfortable with? And they say, well, no, I'm comfortable with the device. And I'll say, okay, well, is it the price that we're not comfortable with? They say, yeah, I'm just not too comfortable with the upfront cost today. Now I know that it's the upfront costs they're not comfortable with, and now I can try to overcome that objection, right? I've discovered the real objection at that point. Usually if I can't find it with one of these 2 questions, this third question of plan, device, or price, usually one of their real objection falls into one of those 3 categories. And that we may need to go back through and re-explain something or give them a second option or re-look at some things. Okay, so once I've done that, I've discovered the real objection and I've solved for it. Now I can re-ask for the sale. So I can do that with this question here. What if I was able to ... Would that interest you in buying today? Now I asked this with a what if statement, and again, would it interest you in buying today? Now, what this does is if the customer says yes, they've already agreed to buy today if I can solve this problem. So let's say it was price. You say, okay, what if I was able to get your upfront cost today down a little bit? Would that interest you in buying today? And they say yes. Well, now I can say, okay, what if I was able to knock $25 off your total cost today? How does that sound? I say, okay, now I've got the sale. If I say, well, what if I was able to knock down a little bit of the price today? Would that interest you in buying? And they say, well, not really. Now I know that's not the real objection again. Now I got to start back over and with step number 2 and go through these steps again and find the real objection because it wasn't price. Okay, and then as a last-ditch effort, if I've gone through all these steps and I'm still not getting anywhere and the customer's about to walk, I'll ask them this final question is, well, what else can I do to earn your business today? Right? That's just my last question to say, well, what else can I do for you? I've asked this question many times where I've just had no idea where to go with a customer, and they'll just say, oh, well, if you could do this or this, I would buy today. And it's usually something easy, I just didn't think about it. And I'll just say, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that. Bing, bing, boom. I can take care of that problem and I earn their business. Okay, and again, you can see with these 2 questions, this last ditch effort it's an aggressive question. But again, as I've gone through this and started soft and gone gradually more aggressive, it actually works very, very well, and the customer and you can both feel very, very comfortable throughout this process. So again, I want to bring up this objection reality. When you're going through this, you may say, well, I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to come across as a pushy or unprofessional salesperson. If you keep these things in mind, you're actually doing your customer a favor by helping uncover objections or uncover problems that we can solve. Because again, our customers want us to solve their problems. And if you can't solve their problem, they're not coming back to you. Whether they said they are or not, you didn't solve their problem. They're going to find somebody else who can. So we have to keep that in mind. When that customer leaves, they are not coming back to you. They may come back to your store because it's a convenience, but they're just going to buy from the next person that's there. If your store wasn't convenient for them, then they're just going to go to the store that was convenient and buy from somebody else. So you have to keep these things in mind. And as you do, when you go through that, go through those objection steps, it'll help you feel more comfortable in that process. Okay, so let's go through a couple examples to help this make a little bit more sense. So here's our objection. The customer needs to speak with their wife. So step number 1, confirm. Okay, I understand that you need to speak with your wife, but let me ask you, have you 2 talked about this already? My follow-up question to that is, what do you think she will say? And then my third question is, well, can we call her and see what she says? It'll save you a trip. Again, I'm starting with a softer question and getting a little bit more aggressive by the third question. Whether my customer says yes or no to this question, I'm still going to follow up with this one, right? They say, hey, have you talked to your wife about this already? And they say yes. I say, okay, well, when you talk to her again, what do you think she's going to say? If he says no, I'll say the same thing. Again, I'm already into step 2, which is to try and find out if this is the real objection or not. And based on what he says here, well, what do you think she will say? He says, she's probably fine with it. Now I know that's not the real objection, and now I'm going to try and find something else, right? Or if he says, she's probably going to say no, then I'll say, okay, but does everything sound good to you? Right now I'm going to go back here to step 2 and say, okay, but everything sounds fine to you. And he says, oh yeah, I like everything. Everything sounds good. Just need to run it by the wife. Now I can say, okay, well, can we call her and see what she says? It'll save you a trip, right? Again, if I come out of the gates with this question and this wasn't the real objection, now I've just caught my customer a lie and they're going to backpedal. We don't want them doing that, right? So again, we're going soft and then we're going to get gradually more aggressive. Okay, now let's say your customer says, well, my wife is at work, we can't get a hold of her. Now I know that this still, again, is probably not the real concern, and so I'm going to go to this question here, which is, well, what hesitations do you have from what we went over? Is it the plan, is it the device, or is it the price? I'm going to try and uncover an objection that's under one of those three things. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to say, well, what else can I do to earn your business? And that's my last ditch effort. And if I've been able to uncover a need from there, now I'm going to re-ask for the sale with a what if statement. What if I was able to do this? Would that interest you in buying today? Okay, example number 2. I'll be back tomorrow. Do you have a card? So here are the steps. Number 1, I'm going to confirm. Yeah, I do have a card. Let me go grab it. Okay, I'm going to go grab my card, but before I hand it to him, I'm going to ask him some more questions. So my next question is going to be, well, let me ask you, what's holding you back from buying today? Or I can go softer from there. I can say, well, hey, let me ask you, what other questions do you have? And then I can go with this one as a follow-up question. Well, what's holding you back from buying today? Is it plan, is it device, or is it price? If I've uncovered that need, now I can solve for, re-ask for the sale. And I can say, well, what if I was able to do this? Would that interest you in buying today? Okay, so those are 2 examples of how to overcome these classic objections. Now I can tell you from experience that using these 3 steps can help close a lot of deals and can help you earn business today, and it will actually satisfy your customers. You'll get better customer reviews, your customers will be happier with you, you'll get paid today, and your customers will actually send you a lot of referrals because you take care of problems. You can solve problems for customers today. Okay, so now I want you to do some practice. I want you to write down 3 common objections that you've seen or experienced. You can use one of the ones that we've, of one of the 2 examples that I've given you. And then I want you to write down the steps of each objection. Walk through it mentally of what a customer would say to you once you've asked that question, and then kind of write it down, go through that whole process. Then I want you to practice with your manager or your MIT and do a role play with it. And your goal is to practice each one of these objections until you can smoothly transition within each step, right? And your manager or MIT is going to obviously play the role of the customer, and they'll come up with some objections and try and make it as realistic as possible. And then I want you to do this for all 3 objections. Your purpose for doing this is if you can do this smoothly in a role play, when you get in front of a customer and this happens, you'll be more comfortable going through this. So that's the goal. So that's all I have for overcoming objections. Again, remember the 3 simple steps, practice them, and then write things down as you see objections that you can be overcoming. And remember, start soft and then gradually get a little bit more aggressive with all of your questions. As you do that, you'll be able to sell a lot more and close a lot more deals.